Deep beneath the endless dunes of the Sahara, where the wind carves ghosts into the sand and the sun bleaches every secret, a discovery emerged that has scholars whispering in hushed tones. Imagine a stone so smooth, so perfectly formed, that it seems to pulse with an ancient heartbeat. A stone heart, unearthed from a burial pit dated to the Bronze Age, over 4,000 years ago. How did such an object, resembling a human organ, survive the crushing weight of centuries of sand, and why was it placed in a region where no known civilization ever left monumental tombs? The excavation began as a routine survey near the ancient caravan route of Tadrar-Kakis, a place where rock art tells stories of hunters and mystical beasts. When the team brushed away layers of ochre-stained sand, a glimmer of black basalt caught the light. The stone measured just 20 centimeters across, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen, its veins echoing the delicate network of a real heart. Embedded within a clay matrix, the object was surrounded by fragments of pottery, copper beads, and fragments of a reed-woven mat, artifacts that firmly anchor it to the Bronze Age. Scientists have been torn between two unsettling possibilities. Some argue it is a ritualistic effigy, a symbolic heart offered to the desert gods to ensure safe passage for caravans across the unforgiving sea of sand. Others, noting the stone's composition, a rare form of chert not found locally, suggest it could be a trade item, a prized talisman carried from distant lands, perhaps the Nile Valley, or even the enigmatic civilization of the Garamantian oasis. Yet the most chilling hypothesis comes from a handful of archaeologists who point to the stone's uncanny resemblance to a real human heart, complete with chambers that mirror anatomical structures known only to later cultures. Could the Bronze Age peoples of the Sahara have possessed a knowledge of anatomy that rivals later Greek physicians? The context deepens the mystery. The burial pit lay beneath a collapsed sandstone arch, a natural alcove that would have been hidden from the harsh sun. No human remains were found, only a scattering of ash, as if a fire had once burned and then been extinguished, leaving only the stone to endure. Radiocarbon dating of the surrounding charcoal places the ritual, or perhaps the tragedy, around 2100 BCE, a time when the Sahara was transitioning from a greener savanna to the arid desert we know today. What purpose could such a stone serve in a world where myths were spoken around flickering fires, and the line between the living and the dead was thin? Was it a protective charm, a reminder of mortality, or something far more ominous, a conduit for the souls of the departed, sealed within the stone's cold core? The desert refuses to answer, its silence as vast as the dunes that conceal it. Even now, as researchers carefully lift the stone heart from its burial chamber, a palpable tension fills the air. The object rests on a velvet-like cloth, its surface reflecting the dim torchlight, as if it were still beating, waiting for the next secret to be revealed. The Sahara has given up a fragment of its ancient soul, but the echo it leaves behind is louder than any wind howl. Some mysteries are etched not in stone, but in the very breath of the desert itself. The wind that sweeps across the desolate dunes of the Arabian Peninsula carries more than sand. It carries a murmur that has haunted explorers for over a century. Deep within the shifting sea of yellow, hidden beneath a crust of ancient limestone, lie the ruins of Ubar, the fabled Atlantis of the sands. Legends whisper that once it was a bustling metropolis, a hub of frankincense trade, its streets lined with towering stone pillars and glittering caravans. Yet when the first modern expedition uncovered its crumbling walls, they found something far stranger than any forgotten market stall: a vast expanse of glyphs, etched into the very stone, that no scholar could decipher. These markings differ from the familiar South Arabian scripts. Their lines twist like serpents, their angles cut sharper than any known alphabet, forming patterns that seem to pulse under the relentless sun. Some researchers argue they could be a lost dialect of the ancient Sabaean language, a tongue erased before parchment ever existed. Others propose a completely unknown writing system, perhaps a symbolic code used by a secretive guild that guarded the city's most valuable commodity, frankincense, and something far more precious. The glyphs appear in clusters, each block framing a scene that hints at ritual. One panel shows a figure cloaked in what looks like woven sand, holding a staff that ends in a horned animal's head. Another depicts a circle of stars that does not match any known constellations, its points aligning with the solstices in a way that suggests an astronomical calendar far more precise than any known for the era. Yet the most unsettling of all is a series of concentric circles. each inscribed with a single, repeating symbol that seems to vibrate, as if the stone itself remembers a forgotten chant. When archaeologists attempted to photograph the glyphs, their lenses caught faint, shifting shadows that moved against the grain of the stone, as though the carvings were breathing. Infrared scans revealed subtle temperature differentials. The glyphs were cooler than surrounding rock, hinting at a lingering energy or perhaps a material composition unknown to modern science. Some locals swear they can hear faint whispers when the night is still, a low susurrus emanating from the walls, repeating a phrase that no ear can grasp. One theory, proposed by a team of epigraphers, suggests the symbols are a form of proto-musical notation, a code meant to be read through sound, not sight. If true, the very act of speaking the glyphs might unlock a resonance that has lain dormant for millennia. Yet attempts to vocalize the patterns have only resulted in eerie echoes that fade into the desert wind, leaving more questions than answers. The mystery deepens when satellite imagery shows a network of underground chambers beneath the ruins, their entrances sealed with the same indecipherable symbols. Could these be vaults holding the city's most guarded secrets? Or perhaps they are tombs for a lineage of priests who once communed with forces beyond mortal comprehension? Even after decades of study, the glyphs of Ubar remain stubbornly unreadable, a silent testament to a civilization that vanished without a trace, taking its knowledge into the dunes. As night falls over the ruined walls, the desert seems to hold its breath, and the stone whispers on, an invitation, a warning, or perhaps a lament for a story forever lost to the sands. Have you ever looked up at a storm and wondered whether the sky could ever betray the very blood that courses through our veins? On the night of June 13, 1848, the heavens over the coastal town of Valparaiso, Chile, did just that. They opened and poured a torrent of crimson rain that stained the cobblestones, the rooftops, and the souls of every witness. The first droplets fell just after dusk, as a gentle mist rose from the Pacific and turned an eerie, rust-colored shade. By midnight, the rain intensified, turning the streets into mirrors of a scarlet river. Residents, accustomed to the region's usual drizzle of silvery rain, fled their homes in panic, clutching rosaries and shouting prayers to a god who seemed to be weeping blood. Children screamed, dogs barked, and the scent of iron hung heavy in the air, as if the very atmosphere had been laced with rust. Local newspapers of the time, such as El Mercurio de Valparaiso described the phenomenon with a mixture of awe and terror. The rain fell like liquid rubies, coating everything in a hue that no mortal eye should ever witness. Witnesses reported that the water left a metallic residue on their skin, and that the rain's taste was unmistakably that of iron. Some claimed the sky itself had cracked open, releasing the blood of the earth itself. Scientists of the era were baffled. The first naturalist to investigate, French geologist Charles Darwin's contemporary, the Chilean physician Dr. Ramon Mendoza, collected samples and sent them to European laboratories. The analyses revealed an unusually high concentration of iron oxide particles, but the exact source remained a mystery. Was it a volcanic eruption that lofted ash into the upper atmosphere, only for a sudden downpour to wash it back down? The Andes are restless, and a minor eruption at the nearby Cerro Nevado did occur weeks earlier, spewing ash rich in hematite. Yet the timing and the vivid intensity of the rain did not match any known volcanic precipitation patterns. Another theory emerged from the sailors who had just returned from the Pacific. They spoke of a massive algal bloom, *Trichodosmium*, that had turned the ocean's surface a deep, blood red. When wind currents lifted the algae's microscopic cells into the atmosphere, they could have acted as condensation nuclei, tinting the rain. Modern research on similar red rain events in Kerala, India, in 2001 confirms that spores of a particular algae can survive the journey from sea to sky, coloring rain droplets an eerie crimson. Yet the Chilean event occurred far from any documented algal bloom, and the iron-rich residue did not align with organic matter. Indigenous Mapuche legends also entered the narrative. Oral histories speak of the sky's lament, a celestial warning that appears when the earth is about to be scarred by war. In 1848, Chile was embroiled in the War of the Pacific, and the blood-red rain was interpreted by some as an omen of the bloodshed to come. The convergence of natural observation, scientific speculation, and cultural myth turned this single night into a lingering mystery that still haunts the streets of Valparaiso. To this day, the 1848 blood-red rain remains one of the world's most vivid meteorological enigmas. Was it a perfect storm of volcanic ash, an oceanic algae that painted the clouds, or a darker omen whispered by the winds? The answer, like the rain itself, has long since dried on the stone walls of history, leaving only the lingering scent of iron and the unsettling feeling that the sky can sometimes bleed, and we are powerless to stop it. What if the very silence of a poisoned forest were a warning we could hear, if only we dared to listen? Deep within the exclusion zone of Chernobyl lies the Red Forest, a scarred landscape where trees turned a haunting crimson before they fell, their roots forever soaked in radioactive ash. Yet, long after the ghosts of the 1986 disaster have faded from the headlines, a low, almost imperceptible vibration drifts across the dead canopy, a hum that no instrument can fully capture and no scientist can yet explain. When the wind sweeps through the twisted trunks, the air itself seems to thrum with a frequency that sits between a distant engine and a whispered chant. Researchers who have set up sensitive seismographs in the zone report a constant, low-frequency oscillation, roughly 2 to 4 Hz, that persists day and night, unaffected by weather, temperature, or human activity. Some have tried to attribute it to the slow settling of contaminated soil, the slow decay of cesium-137, or even the faint echo of the reactor's cooling pumps that once sang in the distance. Yet the measurements do not match any known mechanical source, and the hum continues even after the reactors have been sealed for decades. Locals who once dared to trespass speak of an unsettling vibration that makes the hair on the back of their necks stand up, as if the forest itself were exhaling a mournful sigh. One theory, whispered among the few who study anomalous phenomena, suggests that the massive ionizing radiation field could be interacting with the Earth's geomagnetic field, creating a subtle electromagnetic resonance that we feel as sound. Another, more speculative, idea proposes that the forest's massive amount of dead wood is undergoing a slow, spontaneous combustion process known as smoldering, producing low-frequency acoustic waves invisible to conventional microphones but perceptible through ground-borne vibrations. What makes this hum truly eerie is its persistence. Even after years of silence, when the radioactivity levels have begun to dip, scientists still record the same steady pulse. It is as if the Red Forest, once a living organism turned into a radioactive graveyard, has found a new way to speak. Some call it a natural alarm, a reminder that the scars of humanity's hubris are not only visible in yellowed maps, but also audible to those who listen closely enough. The mystery lingers. Is the hum a natural byproduct of decay, a hidden electromagnetic chorus, or something even stranger, an echo of the catastrophe itself, still resonating through the twisted trunks and the very ground beneath our feet? Until the answer emerges, the Red Forest's silent song will continue to haunt the empty clearings, a low, lingering note that refuses to be silenced. The darkness of Palermo's catacombs is not merely a veil of stone. It is a living memory that breathes, whispers, and sometimes suffocates. Imagine descending into a labyrinth where the air grows colder with each step, where the faint echo of dripping water is accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible rustle, a sound that, for centuries, has gone unnoticed by the casual visitor. Deep beneath the bustling streets of Sicily, workers in the 1800s uncovered a row of marble slabs unlike any burial they had ever seen. Inside, the bodies were not the usual shrouded, skeletal remains that line the crypts. Instead, they were sealed within glass-like sarcophagi, each one holding a man or woman-shaped figure whose limbs were still curled, eyes half opened, and faces frozen in an expression of bewildered terror. These living coffins, as they came to be known, sparked a frenzy of speculation. Some historians argue that they are the result of an ancient punitive rite, a macabre warning to those who dared to betray the city's secret societies. Others suggest a more sinister medical experiment. A forgotten 16th-century physician, obsessed with the limits of human endurance, may have deliberately induced a state of suspended animation, sealing the subjects in airtight chambers to study the effects of prolonged deprivation. The glass that encases them is unlike any material produced in that era. Its clarity and resilience hint at a composition that modern chemists can only approximate with sophisticated alloys. Local folklore adds another layer of dread. Legends speak of the breathless ones, souls condemned to linger between life and death because they dared to unearth a hidden altar dedicated to an obscure Roman deity. Supposedly, the altar granted immortality at a terrible price. The wearer would never truly die, yet would be trapped forever within a stone womb. The bodies in the catacombs bear the marks of such a curse, no sign of decomposition, but also no sign of true vitality. Archaeologists who have examined the coffins report a chilling detail. Each figure still holds a small, intricately carved amulet, its symbols unreadable, yet undeniably purposeful. Some scholars propose that these talismans were intended to bind the spirit to the flesh, preventing the soul from wandering away. The amulets remain sealed, their meanings lost to time, and they have resisted all attempts at imaging, as if the very act of observation would awaken whatever dormant force lies within. No definitive answer has emerged, and the mystery deepens with every new analysis. The catacombs continue to hold these enigmatic occupants, their eyes forever gazing into a darkness that may be both literal and metaphysical. As we step back into the light, one question lingers like a cold breath on the back of our necks. What price would we be willing to pay for a glimpse of eternity? And could the living coffins of Palermo be the ultimate, silent warning that some doors, once opened, should never be closed? What could make a lake hidden beneath a continent of perpetual night hum like a living organ, its vibrations traveling through kilometers of crystal-clear ice to reach the ears of the few who dare to listen? Deep beneath the frozen plateau of Antarctica, isolated for more than 2 million years, lies Lake Vostok, a body of water sealed off from the world by a 4-kilometer thick lid of ancient ice. When Russian scientists first drilled through that barrier in 2012, they expected only sterile, alien-like water, a pristine laboratory for studying life in extreme isolation. What they heard, however, was something far stranger. A low, resonant thrum that seemed to echo from the lake's depths, a sound that some have described as the planet's own heartbeat. The phenomenon was first detected by a network of seismometers placed around the Russian Vostok station. Instead of the random crackle of shifting ice, the instruments recorded a regular, almost melodic vibration, a subtle pulse recurring every few seconds. The frequency sits in the infrasonic range, below the threshold of human hearing, yet it can be amplified and rendered audible, revealing a deep, sonorous note that reverberates through the surrounding ice. Some researchers argue that the source is purely geological, the slow movement of the glacier above, the flexing of the ice shell under the weight of the lake, or the subtle rise and fall of water pressure as it expands and contracts with temperature changes. Others point to the possibility of a living engine, a hidden ecosystem of extremophiles whose metabolic activity could generate rhythmic gas bubbles, each release sending a tiny shockwave through the water, then through the ice. The lake's isolation adds a layer of eerie plausibility to the latter theory. No sunlight penetrates the darkness, yet hydrothermal vents at the lake floor may spew mineral-rich water, providing a chemical energy source for microbes that have never seen the sun. In similar deep-sea environments on Earth, microbial mats have been known to create periodic gas releases, producing audible popping sounds that can travel for miles. Could a comparable process be occurring under a frozen ceiling that has never been broken? Some speculative models suggest that the lake's water, supersaturated with gases like methane and carbon dioxide, could periodically vent these bubbles, each eruption producing a faint acoustic pulse. Over time, such pulses could synchronize, creating the steady hum detected by the instruments. Yet the mystery deepens when the rhythm appears to shift. During the austral summer, the pulse slows, while in the polar winter it quickens, hinting at a connection to the subtle temperature gradients that still exist within the ice. This seasonal modulation is difficult to reconcile with a purely tectonic origin, nudging the scientific community toward more exotic explanations. One controversial hypothesis, put forward by a small group of cryogenic researchers, proposes that the lake harbors a hidden, semi-solid structure, a massive, ancient ice shelf that flexes like a drumhead as the lake's water level rises and falls with the slow melting of the overlying ice. Each flex would generate a low-frequency vibration that could be perceived as a song. Whatever the cause, the singing of Lake Vostok remains a haunting reminder that our planet still keeps secrets beneath its most inhospitable frontiers. The sound is a whisper from a world untouched by humanity, a reminder that even in the deepest silence of ice, something may be moving, breathing, resonating. As researchers continue to analyze the data, the lake's eerie chorus endures, leaving us to wonder. Is it a natural symphony of rock and water, or the faint pulse of life that has endured in isolation for eons, waiting for the day when the ice finally cracks and the song is finally heard. Deep beneath the jagged spine of the Andes, where the wind howls through stone corridors and the earth seems to breathe with an ancient pulse, lies a secret that has eluded scholars for centuries. A sprawling complex of tunnels, plazas, and terraced platforms that predate the Inca by millennia. How could such an advanced city have existed in a place so remote, and why did its memory vanish like mist at sunrise? The first clue emerged in 1999, when a group of Andean shepherds reported a cavern that echoed with the sound of running water far below their usual pastures. When archaeologists followed the trail, they uncovered a network of stone walls cut with precision, some bearing intricate carvings of spirals, feline heads, and a strange sun disk that does not match the typical Incan iconography. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal found in sealed chambers places the construction around 2500 BCE, roughly 1,000 years before the rise of the Nazca and well before the earliest known Andean settlements. What makes the site truly baffling is its engineering. The builders diverted a subterranean river, creating an elaborate irrigation system that fed terraced fields hidden from view. The water flow is controlled by stone gates that operate on a counterweight principle, a technology not documented elsewhere in pre-Columbian South America. In several chambers, archaeologists discovered perfectly aligned stone slabs that point toward the winter solstice, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy. The walls themselves tell a fragmented story. Some glyphs resemble the enigmatic Andean spiral found on distant coastal ceramics, while others depict humanoid figures with elongated limbs, their eyes rendered as hollow circles. One mural, preserved in a pocket of volcanic ash, shows a procession of people carrying large stone tablets inscribed with a repeating pattern of 3 interlocking triangles, a motif that has no parallel in known Andean scripts. Local legends speak of the people of the earth, a vanished race that retreated underground to escape a cataclysmic flood. Some researchers propose that a massive landslide, triggered by an ancient earthquake, could have sealed the city, preserving it in a time capsule of stone and silence. Others argue that the complex was intentionally buried as a ritual act, a hidden sanctuary for an elite priesthood. Yet, despite extensive excavations, many questions remain unanswered. Who were these architects? How did they acquire the knowledge to shape stone and water with such finesse? And why did their civilization leave no trace on the surface, no oral tradition, no surviving descendants? As night falls over the Andean peaks and the wind whistles through the hidden passages, the answers linger in the shadows, waiting for a voice brave enough to listen to the stone's silent testimony. What if a sea existed not of water, but of light, visible only for a few fleeting minutes each evening, and then it simply disappeared from every map and memory? That is the enigma that has haunted cartographers and travelers along the remote coast of the Orinoco Basin for centuries. The Sea of Stars, a shimmering expanse that glitters on the horizon at dusk, then vanishes without a trace, leaving only blank ink where it should be. The first recorded mention comes from a 1623 journal kept by the Spanish explorer Diego de Lora, who noted, "When the sun sinks, the western plain ignites with 1,000 fires, as though the heavens had spilled into the earth. We set our compass toward it, yet the next morning the land is plain and empty, the waters calm, and no one in the village remembers such a sight." Laura's companions dismissed it as a mirage, but the entry survived, copied into later maps by Dutch and French chartmakers. By the late 1700s, the sea appeared on several nautical charts as a dark blue blot with a golden fringe, labeled simply Mar de Estrellas. Yet every sailor who set sail to locate it reported an ordinary river delta, the stars reflected only in the ordinary night sky. Modern investigators have returned to the site with satellite imaging, infrared surveys, and even drone footage. In the evenings, a thin, iridescent mist seems to rise from the floodplain, catching the last rays of sunlight and refracting them into a dazzling, star-filled tapestry. The phenomenon lasts roughly 15 minutes before the mist condenses and sinks, leaving the landscape unchanged. Some scientists propose a rare confluence of atmospheric particles, humidity, and the region's unique limestone geology that creates a temporary photonic display, much like a giant, natural aurora. Others suggest a cultural dimension. Indigenous oral traditions speak of the night river that carries the souls of ancestors, hinting that the visual effect may have been amplified by ritual fires placed along the banks. What makes the Sea of Stars truly perplexing is its disappearance from the cartographic record. By the early 19th century, the feature was gradually erased. Some historians argue that colonial powers deliberately removed it to discourage navigation into territories claimed by rival empires. Others note that as the region's river courses shifted, common in the Orinoco's floodplain, the precise conditions needed for the light display may have become rarer, rendering the phenomenon a fleeting memory. Even today, when the sun kisses the horizon, a handful of locals still whisper about the glowing waterline, warning outsiders that to stare too long is to invite the sea's pull. The mystery endures, a fragile veil of light that appears only at dusk, then retreats into the shadows of history, leaving us to wonder whether the Sea of Stars ever truly existed, or whether it was a fleeting convergence of nature, myth, and human imagination that simply refused to be captured on paper. What if a solitary stone, half a kilometer from the nearest settlement, could defy the very laws of physics and crawl across an endless sea of sand? This is not a myth whispered around a campfire, but a baffling phenomenon that has haunted desert explorers for decades, the shifting monolith of the Gobi Desert. First recorded in 1967 by a Soviet geologist named Anatoly Rakitin, the stone was described as a massive basalt slab, roughly 3 meters tall and weighing several tons, perched on a flat, wind-scoured plateau near the border of Mongolia and China. Rakitin's team noted something impossible. The stone's position had changed overnight. The next morning, fresh tracks of sand and a faint, crescent-shaped depression marked a new footprint half a meter away from where the monolith had stood. No evidence of human or animal interference could be found, and the surrounding terrain bore no signs of wind erosion sufficient to move such a weight. Over the following years, numerous expeditions returned, each documenting the same unsettling pattern. Satellite images from the early 2000s reveal a faint, looping trail etched into the desert floor, as if an invisible hand were dragging the stone along a preordained route. Some researchers propose that a rare combination of high-altitude katabatic winds, amplified by the canyon-like contours of the plateau, could generate enough force to nudge the slab when the sand reaches a critical moisture level. Yet calculations show that even the strongest recorded gusts fall short of the required thrust. Local nomadic herders speak of the wandering stone in hushed tones, linking it to ancient shamanic rites. They tell stories of a spirit bound to the earth, cursed to roam until a forgotten pact is fulfilled. In the 1990s, a team of archaeologists uncovered petroglyphs nearby depicting a massive stone with legs, a motif that appears only in this remote region. Could these carvings be a cultural memory of the monolith's restless journey? Skeptics argue that the phenomenon is a series of clever hoaxes, perhaps staged by treasure hunters hoping to attract attention. They point to the occasional presence of hidden levers and buried logs, which could be used to shift the stone in small increments. However, the monolith's movements have persisted despite rigorous monitoring, including motion-sensitive cameras and laser rangefinders installed by a joint Mongolian-Japanese research group in 2015. The instruments recorded minute vibrations synchronized with sudden temperature drops, suggesting an unknown physical trigger. One lingering hypothesis involves permafrost melt beneath the basalt. As the desert's temperature swings dramatically between day and night, the frozen ground could expand and contract, creating a subtle, yet powerful, heave that lifts the stone ever so slightly. When the sun's rays strike the slab at a particular angle, the thermal gradient might cause differential expansion, effectively turning the monolith into a slow-moving lever. The truth remains out of reach, and each new piece of data only deepens the mystery. The Gobi's shifting monolith stands as a silent sentinel, its silent glide a reminder that even in a world mapped by satellite and science, some stones still keep their secrets. And as the wind whispers across the dunes, one can't help but wonder, what unseen hand guides this ancient rock, and what will happen when it finally finds its final resting place? What could a single, silent pulse of emerald light, cutting through the endless darkness of the Siberian taiga, possibly mean? On a frigid night in late October 2019, a group of trappers from the remote village of Tazovsky reported an eerie, hovering glow that rose from the forest floor, lingered for exactly 12 seconds, and then vanished without a sound. Since that night, dozens of similar sightings have been logged across the vast expanse of western Siberia, each described with the same chilling precision. A vertical column of brilliant green, brighter than the moon, seemingly anchored to the earth, then dissolving into nothingness as if the night itself had swallowed it. The first recorded account dates back to 1978, when a Soviet geophysical expedition noted an unusual green flare while measuring auroral activity near the Yenisei River. Their instruments recorded a brief spike in electromagnetic readings, yet no corresponding solar storm was detected. Over the following decades, the phenomenon resurfaced sporadically, once over the remote Kolymer region, again above the peat bogs of the Pudorana Plateau. In each case, witnesses described a palpable drop in temperature, a faint metallic odor, and an inexplicable sense of dread that lingered long after the light faded. Scientists have offered a handful of hypotheses, but none can fully explain the pattern. Some researchers suggest a rare form of atmospheric electricity, perhaps a localized, green sprite, generated by unseen thunderclouds deep within the taiga's canopy. Others point to the possibility of a ground-based plasma discharge, triggered by the unique composition of permafrost-rich soils combined with high-latitude geomagnetic conditions. A more speculative theory proposes that the flare could be a natural manifestation of the Earth's own magnetic heartbeat, a pulse that occasionally pierces the ionosphere in isolated pockets. Indigenous Evenki legends add a darker layer to the mystery. Oral histories speak of the Green Sentinel, a spirit that appears when the forest is on the brink of a great change, warning hunters to stay hidden. The elders claim the flare marks a boundary between the world of the living and a realm where ancient forest deities linger. Even satellite data has struggled to capture the event. During a 2021 overflight, a low-orbit imaging satellite recorded an anomalous bright spot over the Tamar Peninsula that matched the reported time window, yet the resolution was too coarse to discern any shape or source. The fleeting nature of the light, combined with the remote, inhospitable terrain, ensures that every new sighting is met with both fascination and terror. So, what prowls the Siberian night, painting the darkness with a single, haunting brushstroke of green? Is it a natural atmospheric quirk, a hidden geophysical pulse, or something far older, perhaps a lingering echo of forgotten beliefs, manifesting itself in light? The taiga keeps it secret, and the midnight green flare remains an unanswered question, flickering like a ghostly lantern at the edge of our understanding. What if a single book, bound in human skin and inked with a substance that should not exist before the modern era, could rewrite everything we thought we knew about medieval Europe? In the dim vault of a forgotten monastery in the Carpathian foothills, a leather-bound codex, known only as the Black Book, has haunted scholars for over a century. Its pages are black as night, the script a crimson, almost liquid, that seems to pulse under the flicker of candlelight. When the first antiquarian, Father Ion Dragomir, lifted the cover in 1913, he swore the letters rearranged themselves before his eyes, spelling warnings in a language no one could name. Carbon-14 analysis performed in the 1970s yielded a paradox that still rattles the scientific community. The parchment dates to the 12th century, yet the carbon signature of the ink aligns with a composition that only became chemically feasible in the 19th century. Some researchers argue contamination, but the laboratory reports list a pristine, sealed sample, untouched by modern pollutants. Even more unsettling, the ink contains trace amounts of a rare mineral, siderite, that was not mined in Europe until the early 1700s. The manuscript's content is a chaotic collage of apocalyptic prophecy, astronomical diagrams that anticipate eclipses centuries ahead, and a list of names, some of them real, some unknown, accompanied by dates that end abruptly at 1199. One passage describes a river of fire flowing across the sky, a phrase eerily similar to the 1912 Tunguska event, though the text predates it by 8 centuries. Scholars have tried to decode the cipher, but each attempt yields a new set of symbols, as if the book rewrites itself. Local legend claims the monks who first possessed the volume were cursed. Every caretaker since has met an untimely death, plague, madness, a sudden stroke. The most recent keeper, a young archivist named Alina Varga, vanished from her study one storm riven night, leaving only the book open to a page that reads, "The end is already written." To this day, the Black Book sits locked behind iron bars, its darkness refusing to yield its secrets. Whether it is a hoax, a time-bending artifact, or a relic of a forgotten, technologically advanced sect, the manuscript continues to defy the very tools we trust to date our past, leaving us to wonder, how many chapters of history remain hidden, waiting for a page to turn? The river that night seemed to run with blood. On the night of July 22, 1908, the small village of Kirovsk, tucked between the Urals and the Siberian taiga, awoke to a roar louder than any thunderstorm they had ever known. The water that surged through the streets was not the clear, cold meltwater the locals relied upon. It was a thick, rust-red torrent that turned the cobblestones into a river of copper and clotted clay. Windows shattered under its pressure, wooden beams splintered, and the air filled with the metallic scent of iron, as if the very earth itself were bleeding. Witnesses described the flood as instantaneous. Within minutes, the entire settlement was submerged beneath a wall of scarlet water that rose to the height of the church steeple. When the waters finally receded, they left behind a landscape scarred by mud-crusted trees, collapsed roofs, and a lingering rust stain that would not wash away. Yet, despite the devastation, the source of this crimson deluge remains a mystery that has haunted scientists and historians for more than a century. The first clue came from a lone survivor, a fisherman named Pavel, who swore he had seen the river rise from a fissure in the ground near the old mining shaft abandoned in 1889. He described a sudden geyser of hot, rust-tinged water spewing from the earth, as if the planet had opened a wound. When geologists later examined the area, they found no permanent spring, no mineral vein, and no volcanic activity that could explain such a massive, rapid discharge of iron-laden water. Some researchers have suggested that a massive, subterranean iron ore deposit could have been destabilized by a minor earthquake, releasing a slurry of water and ore that surged to the surface. Others point to a rare phenomenon known as a red flash flood, where high concentrations of dissolved iron in groundwater can turn a floodwater a vivid crimson when exposed to oxygen. However, both theories fall short. The volume of water was far greater than any known aquifer could hold, and no trace of a sudden seismic event was recorded in the nearby observatories. Even the most advanced remote sensing techniques applied in the 1970s failed to locate a lingering underground channel or a crater that could have fed the flood. Satellite imagery taken decades later shows only a shallow depression, indistinguishable from the surrounding tundra, as if the earth had somehow swallowed the evidence of its own wound. Local folklore now whispers of a blood river that appears only when the land remembers a forgotten battle, a sacrifice, or a curse placed upon the ground centuries ago. What truly caused the 1908 Red River flood? Was it a hidden reservoir of iron-rich water unleashed by forces we cannot yet comprehend? Or is there a darker story etched into the very bedrock of the region, one that refuses to be uncovered? The answer remains as elusive as the river's source, leaving the night sky over Kirovsk forever tinged with a faint, rust-colored hue that no one can explain. The wind that sweeps across the endless tundra of Yakutia carries more than just the scent of pine and the bite of frost. It carries a whisper that has haunted the local shepherds for generations. They speak of a creature that roams the frozen rivers beneath the snow-capped ridges, a being that leaves no footprints yet shatters ice with a single, resonant crack. What is it that stalks the permafrost, and why does it remain unseen? For centuries, the Yakut people have left offerings of dried reindeer meat at a solitary stone cairn near the riverbank, hoping to appease the Almacan, the name they give the beast. According to oral tradition, the creature is as large as a horse, its hide a slick, obsidian black that absorbs the weak summer light, and its eyes glow a muted amber, like the aurora reflected in frozen water. Hunters who have dared to follow the faint, rhythmic thuds of its massive paws report hearing a low, mournful howl that reverberates through the night, a sound that seems to come from both the surface and the depths below. In the 1970s, a Soviet research team equipped with early sonar devices set up a temporary outpost near the alleged haunt. Their instruments recorded anomalous readings, large, moving echoes that did not correspond to any known animal, and temperature spikes that rose several degrees within minutes, despite the surrounding air hovering at -30. The team abandoned the site after a night when the ground trembled, and a massive slab of ice cracked open, revealing a shallow, water-filled cavity that quickly refroze, leaving behind a strange, glossy residue later identified as a form of mineral never catalogued in Soviet geological surveys. Modern scientists remain divided. Some propose a previously unknown subspecies of the Siberian tiger, adapted to the icy terrain, while others suggest a relic population of a Pleistocene predator, perhaps a surviving cave bear or a giant mustelid, that has learned to hide beneath the permafrost. A handful of cryptozoologists argue the creature could be a manifestation of a mythic guardian, a spirit bound to the land, citing the consistency of the shepherd's stories across generations. What draws us deeper into this frozen mystery is not just the possibility of a living monster, but the way the phenomenon blurs the line between geology, biology, and folklore. The Yakut shepherds continue their quiet rituals, their breath forming fleeting clouds as they whisper prayers to the unseen watcher. And somewhere beneath the glittering ice, something waits, silent, patient, and perhaps forever beyond the reach of our instruments. The question lingers: are we simply listening to the echo of an ancient fear, or is there truly a predator lurking in the black heart of the Arctic, waiting for the day when the ice finally gives way?